I want to impress upon other people the great comfort that we've gotten from knowing that my dad saved lives.
It's their turn now. It's their turn to be happy.
It's a gift. It's a gift that you've been given, and I feel it's a pride to hold it.
This is a really beautiful garden, and I don't think anyone would want to end up here. This is the Circle of Life Remembrance Garden in Saltail, County Galway, and it is to remember all organ donors in Ireland. The reason I'm here is because in 2013 my dad passed away suddenly and donated 3 organs, his lungs, his liver and his kidneys, and saved 3 lives. I was here when this garden was opened in 2014, and it was so close to losing my dad that it felt really special, but it is still really sad. So, yeah, just who are you?
Dad, yes. Just who are you? Do you want me to start with like my name is whatever?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, my name is Yvonne Cassidy, and I live in Paulstown in County Kilkenny. I was married to Pat Cassidy, who passed away in 2013 unexpectedly, and was an organ donor. Pat was an amazing husband. He absolutely idolised me, treated me like a princess. He was serving in the army when I met him, and was still serving in the army as a sergeant in Stephen's Barracks in Kilkenny at the time he passed away. So because he was in the army, he was fit and healthy, or so we thought. He ran 8K every day. So the fact that he had a heart attack came as a complete surprise to us, came completely out of the blue. Yeah, so it was Halloween, October 31st, 2013, and Pat had gotten tickets to Scarefest, which was a festival that was happening in Shankill Castle, which is just up the road. So we got about halfway there and he stopped in the footpath and said that he really wasn't feeling good, that he had a pain in his chest. So we came back to the house, and I rang the local care doc, and I suppose it was when I was on the phone to the nurse that it really struck me, this is actually quite serious, and she recommended that if I could drive him in, that it was probably the best thing to do to get him there as quickly as possible. So I'm sitting in the room with Pat chatting away, and he suddenly stops talking, and I was asking him questions and he wasn't answering. He just was smiling at me with this funny smile. So after a while I started to get a bit frustrated. I was going, why won't he actually speak to me? A doctor came into the room and examined him and came out and gave me like the worst news possible. I mean, I didn't think things could get any worse at that stage, and he told me that Pat had actually suffered a stroke.
My name is David Crosby. I'm originally from Meath, but living in Cavan now at the minute. I'm the oldest of 5 in my family. Unfortunately, when I was growing up, my sister Regina got sick at 10 days and passed away with a breathing problem at 7 months. About 2 years later, my second brother, Paul, got sick at 10 days, and unfortunately he passed away at 2 years with a breathing problem. 10 years after I was born, they had their fifth child, Kieran. And at 10 days, Kieran, he refused his bottle. And unfortunately, Kieran got sick and he lived till he was just 11 and a half. He passed away when he was 11 and a half on a heart and lung transplant list. And this was very devastating news for our family. I have 3 beautiful children. And when I turned 40, unfortunately, I got sick. I got a persistent cough that just wouldn't go away. I give it a couple of weeks, the usual Irish thing, it'll pass or whatever, but it wouldn't. So the doctors called me in and they said, David, we see something in your lungs, we're not sure what it is. It's not cancerous, but we don't know. I was pronounced with IPF, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is a scarring and a hardness of the lungs. If I didn't get treated, I'd have 1.5 years, 2 years to live, which was very hard to take when you're 40. So myself and my wife went home and told my mum and dad and my sister, and we mourned for 3 days, just wondering why this would come back to our family after taking 3 already. So after the 3 days of wondering and whatever, I suppose my football background kicked in, and I says, I'm not sitting down taking this. I wasn't going to let the disease change who I am. So I said, I'll fight.
I haven't walked down here in so long.
Yeah, I still come for walks up here every now and again, not as often as I used to.
And this is kind of where you would always talk about
This
organ
is
donation.
where we used to walk on a Saturday morning, and we'd have all those conversations about organ donation, all those little arguments where he'd try and convince me that I should do it as well as him, and I was like, absolutely no way, it's not happening. But yeah, looking back now, I'm glad we had all those chats, because it definitely made it so much easier for us. So it was just a case of let's watch and see. But unfortunately, Pat had a second massive brain hemorrhage, and there was no coming back from that at that stage. Never forget, myself and the 3 kids were called into a room by Pat's consultant, and he broke the news to us that, you know, there really was no hope. And it was at that point that he brought up the subject of organ donation. And the 4 of us, we didn't even have to think about it, even though we were still confused and trying to process what was going on. The 4 of us immediately turned around and said, absolutely. And so things were put in motion to harvest his organs. It's not like people think it is. It's not like what you see in the movies. You're not sitting there holding their hand at the end when the machines are turned off. And that's another thing that came as a big surprise to me. Your loved one is taken away while they're still alive for all intents and purposes. Very emotional moment, but also a very special moment to see them and how respectful they were, all standing there with their heads bowed. Yeah.
When I went up earlier on, they did a lung function, and the lung function on my first visit with the biopsy was at 72% of lung capacity, which was below normal. 80 to 120 is normal. On my second visit at Christmas, it went down to 63%. So it was a rapid drop in lung function in a couple of months. And the doctor says, David, you need a double lung transplant as soon as possible. So Professor Egan, he says, David, you're not getting on the list until you lose 2.5 stone. So I dieted over the Christmas, and in 2 months, I lost 2.5 stone. And I thought in my mind that this was going to be fantastic news, but actually it was more a devastating news that I've only crossed a hill to get to a mountain, that the transplant was still ahead. So 2 weeks later, or 13 days after, I got a call on the headphones to say, David, there's a possible match of lungs. And when getting into the back of that ambulance, wondering if I'd ever come back and see Calvin again, was very emotional, and it's a hard thing to take. In the meantime, something happened, the lungs, the recipient lungs, that they failed, so the transplant was called off. So I went back home and was wondering and thinking that could have been my my chance, my gift of life gone, because you don't get it every day. It's not something that comes to you very often.
In 2021, there were 669 patients awaiting organ transplants in Ireland. And last year, 86 deceased donors and 33 live donors donated 250 organs. There's clearly a disparity between how many people donate and how many people need an organ. The Human Tissue Bill 2022 seeks to establish and maintain a register whereby people in Ireland could register their willingness to donate their organs. This would be a soft opt-out system, meaning that your family would still have to make that decision. This idea of presumed consent is not new. Countries like Spain, Austria and France have already implemented such systems. Spain has the highest number of donors per million at 47. If we implemented this idea of presumed consent in Ireland, more and more people would be forced to have the conversations with their family. They would have to opt out if they didn't want to donate their organs. And if they were to die, their family would know what they want.
2 weeks after that, I got a second call in the evening, on a Thursday evening, and this says Dave's going to take 5 or 6 hours. So I lay down, had a little bit of a nap, and I woke up at 4 o'clock on Friday morning, and the nurse was over me, and they says, David, everything's a go, that the double lung transplant's going to go ahead. And they put me out, and I woke up about 2 days after, and everything was good. They were happy with everything. People always say to me, I'm they're very strong and lucky person, but in honesty, it's my family and my wife that's the strong ones, because they have to look at me going through all this. I can do it, I can handle it, because I'm in control. To be told you had a year and a half to live, that you might never see your children grow up, walking down the aisle or any of this kind of stuff, and to be able to power on, to me, was just the best gift in the world.
We agreed to donate Pat's organs in line with his wishes, but as far as I'm concerned, they're not his organs anymore. They belong to the people who received them. The way organ donation works in Ireland is that the donor families are not put in touch with the donees, but they can write to each other. We did receive a letter from the gentleman who received Pat's lungs, a beautiful letter from him, and it really, really, really touched me so much. We'd had 26 years of pure happiness living with Pat, and I just felt it's their turn now. It's their turn to be happy.
So a cousin of mine came in to visit me in ICU, and we were saying how amazing the staff was in the Maher, and he was going to raise some money in the Dublin Marathon, do the Dublin Marathon and raise money. And I said, well, if you're doing a marathon, I'm doing a marathon. So that's where this seed was planted to do a marathon. And because I lived in New York for a few years, I said if I was ever going to do a marathon, it would have been the New York Marathon. I rounded up a team of 14. They all actually came to me and asked me could they join this crusade or whatever to do a marathon, and I had cousins and friends and one of the surgeons in the Maher. So everything was good. Then it came time for the marathon. The cannons blazed with the starting boom, and Frank Sinatra started singing New York, New York, and it was just a magical time. To be 604 days beforehand transplanted, and now being in New York, doing the New York Marathon with family and friends was just a dream world. We got up to the top of Manhattan coming into Brooklyn, and David asked me again, how was I feeling? I told him, this isn't good, I can't feel my feet or nothing. So he stopped me, he took off my runners and socks and massaged my feet and gels on them and the whole lot. I came out after that to try and start again. Unfortunately, my knees started locking. So this was all part of this marathon journey and the heartache you have to go through to get that medal. And I thought I knew New York fairly well, and I seen the last bend, and I took off into a sprint. But unfortunately, it wasn't the last bend. I had another mile to go. And at that time, my fitness instructor, Andy O'Brien, put me on Facebook Live, and everyone was cheering me on. And then I started thinking about my donor, that somebody had to lose their life to give me a life and to give me this privilege to be able to run the marathon. I always start thinking about my 3 siblings that we lost. And then I start thinking about my kids at home and all the people that helped us along the way. The nurses, the staff, and there was a flood of emotions. And it just came over me and I just couldn't stop. And it was a great feeling to have my wife and my mum there at the finish line and to have completed this amazing feat. So we did that. We finished that New York Marathon. It was just the best thing I've probably ever did in my life. But looking back now, it still is. Coming out near the end of lockdown in 2020, unfortunately I picked up COVID. I'd managed to stay away from it for so long, but just near the end of Delta, I picked up COVID. The doctor says, David, this doesn't look good at all. You have very little chance of surviving. So I had to say goodbye to my family, my mum, my dad, my sister, my kids, my wife. And after all we've gone through and all we've fought, it was very hard to say goodbye to them because I'm not really a quitter. So I was put into an induced coma in August, on the 5th of August for 3 weeks. But luckily enough, I did make it. I came out of the coma and unfortunately my kidneys had failed. And now to be on another transplant waiting list, it plays with the mind a lot.
I'm going to have to get really cross with you, okay?
No, don't, because the tail goes between
Stay there now, stay there now. Now stay there. Look, here's your teddy. Oh, lovely teddy bear. Lie down now, good boy. That's it, good boy. I love that picture.
Under the Christmas tree when you got soldier for Christmas.
I think this was the last picture of your dad and the 3 of you.
Was it?
Yeah, it's a pity Keane was so blurred in it, but yeah, that was taken the last Christmas before he died.
That's mad.
Yeah.
And because I'm on dialysis 3 times a week, it's very hard to be a father. The father that I want to be to my children. I have 3 small children, 12, 14 and 16, and they need 2 parents, like, you know, so it's a lot of work on my wife. She's to carry the can on both sides, like, you know, look after me and then try and be the mother to the children, like, you know. So for me, a kidney transplant is everything.
I think we have different ideas on presumed consent, don't we?
I think we do, yeah. Yeah, remind me again what your opinion is.
I'm just all for it. I suppose if you die and you know what, you can't bring them with you. And I just think even if you're asked that question and you say no, I don't know, in my heart, I feel like I couldn't do that. Like I couldn't say no.
Yeah, but do you not think like that will be really traumatic for the family if like they're being forced to go along with something like that when it's not what they really want? Because I mean, it's such a huge thing. And you know, from our experience, like we didn't realise that we wouldn't have that little bit at the end where we sit and hold his hand when they turn off the machine and he passes away. And it is quite traumatic.
Yeah, but if you knew, we didn't know. So it was always going to be difficult because we didn't know that that's what happened. And that's a big part of what we do now and when we campaign is telling people what happens. And I think if you know what's going to happen, if you know beforehand, like, okay, if your loved one's going to be an organ donor, you know, you don't get to be in the room with them when they die, like their body stops functioning. I wanted to get a better understanding of what the general public know about organ donation and presumed consent. So I'm here in Kilkenny to ask a few members of the public what they think. So have you thought about organ donation?
Well, my name is Brendan and I've heard of it.
I have on the card, yes.
Yeah, I know that you have to opt into it at the moment. I actually have one of the cards myself.
I would give organs if I need to, no problem.
Yeah, I've been an organ donor since I was about 18. I've had the card.
And does your next of kin know your wishes?
Yeah, my husband knows and my mum knows both.
Yes.
I don't think I've actually spoke about it.
No.
Have you heard of the Human Tissue Bill 2022?
I haven't heard of that.
Yes, I think so, but I think there needs to be a lot of advertising. A lot more people need to know about it and need to be clear understanding what it is before it's bought in.
I don't.
Yeah, I think so. because like at the moment there's very little people opting for organ donation, and even you can opt for it, but your family then might kind of decide against it. So I definitely think it's the right way to go about it.
I suppose it's a case of like, you know, people are waiting years, so it would be much, much better. And if you feel strongly against it, then it's just a case to tick a box and say no.
It saved my partner's life. He was diagnosed with nephrotic syndrome at 16, so he struggled all his life. And yeah, so 3 years ago, like, it was a blessing in disguise, and since then we've had a baby and everything. So yeah, so I feel very strongly about it.
If you could say anything to your husband's donor, what would you say?
I would just say thank you so much. You've given life to my partner, and he's become a father thanks to you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
I remember after my transplant writing a letter to the family, and I wrote a couple of foolscap pages, but it didn't matter. What ink was just ink. Words aren't invented. The gratitude I have for that person, and it's the family as well, because I know from my own past, look, with my 2 brothers and sister in graves, that family has to go to a grave on birthdays and on holidays and everything. So if I met my donor now, I would have an awful lot of respect for them, because we don't know what people's background story is when we see them.
Dear donor family, I am a 50-year-old male who received the gift of life last November. I was struggling to breathe and had to use oxygen 16 hours a day. There is not a day that goes by that I do not think on how it must have been such a hard decision for you and you losing your loved one. I hope with all my heart this letter brings you some consolation. We have 4 children, 3 boys and 1 girl who is the baby of the house. She is 13 now and has never known me to be other than sick and struggling to breathe. I can now go for long walks in the country with her, but I hope I have expressed my unending gratitude enough. You will be forever in my thoughts and prayers.
Consent is so important to get more organs in the system. So I think that if we can get this bill through, it'll be a great help for everybody. And if it's not for somebody, if they don't want to give their organs, they can still just sign a piece of paper and nothing changes. So that's why it's so important to me, the tissue bill, the organ tissue bill.
I think the bit that has to be gotten right about this is it has to be really, really well publicised so that people are aware of what's involved in organ donation.
I suppose at the back of it, somebody doesn't sign a consent form or doesn't opt out unless they want to give this gift. So it's not guilt. It's actually a gift. It's a gift that you've been given, and I feel it's a pride to hold it.
Hi, come on in and say hello. Come on, hi. Come on in and say hello. Hi, gorgeous girl. Where's Nanny? Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you.
That was two of those dogs that was missing the couch.
Oh, no.
The couch didn't go away with some of
The
it.
couch is not in the right place, you're right.
Maybe it's easy for me to agree with presumed consent. My dad always told me what he wanted. He got me my first donor card when I was 16. I'd like to hear why other people don't like the idea of presumed consent. I suppose they might feel like something's been taken away from them, but the way I feel, my dad saved lives and that trumps everything else.
To